All right, everybody. Hi, I'm Sharon McCaskill from the Helpful GF and Sharon McCaskill Nutrition. I'm a registered dietitian who specializes in celiac disease and gut health and gluten intolerance. And today we have Nicole Sharon Kessler with us. She is the founder and president of Celiac College Guide. It's a groundbreaking resource designed to help students with celiac disease find colleges and universities that meet their unique dietary and lifestyle needs. Inspired by her personal experience as a mother of two daughters with celiac disease, Nicole created this guide to ensure that young people can thrive in college with confidence and support. She has over 2 decades of experience in education and has served in leadership roles as a principal, chief academic officer, and leadership coach. Nicole was also named the National Teacher of the Year by Teach for America, recognizing her commitment to educational excellence. Nicole's work has been featured in case studies, and she has been recognized for her effort to drive academic improvement and foster inclusion in the education system. And today, Nicole is going to share more about her journey with the Celiac College Guide and how it's empowering students nationwide. So, thank you so much for being here and sharing with
Thank you
us.
so much for having me, Sharon. I'm thrilled to be here. I love your work. I actually have like a recipe picked out for later this week. And just your advocacy in general. So thank you so much for having me.
Awesome. When I first saw this, I think we're in a Facebook group together. And when I saw your post about this, I was so excited because my husband has celiac disease and has had it since the 90s, before this was a thing anybody's really
Mhm.
heard of, right? And when he went to college in the early 2000s, gluten-free options were minimal at best and probably fairly sketchy in the cafeteria where he went
Right.
to school. He said, like, his experience, right? He'd go in one day and there'd be this soup, like, he was told these soups are gluten free, but the next day that same soup would not be gluten free because they would use like leftovers from whatever and like add it in, or a different person made it. And he literally felt like the only safe thing he had to eat was either the fresh produce that wasn't even like cooked at
Right.
all. So like the fruit in a bowl, right over here that wasn't even prepped in the salad bar, or his box of cereal that he had to ask for every morning that was behind the counter. And so he just like lived off of bagels in his dorm room, right? And a couple microwave things. That's literally how he lived. But he still had to pay for a meal plan because he lived on campus. Just so
Yep.
terrible.
Yep.
So when I saw what you were doing, I was like, I know colleges have gotten so much better about this, but has every college? And I feel like that's where you can give us so much, just enlighten us to the situation. So, what is kind of the current day struggle of students with celiac disease?
So thanks for asking. And the reality is it's all over the place, right? Just
Yeah.
like you hinted at there. So there are colleges that are doing this really, really well. And there are colleges that are struggling, where kids are struggling to meet their basic health needs. There was a study a few years back, and that's actually how this got started because I read it, and as a celiac mom, it just haunted me. So it said over half of students routinely skip meals at college because they're afraid of getting gluten because of their fears over gluten. And I'm thinking to myself, for so many kiddos, right, this is their first time away from home. College is stressful enough, it's scary enough. And then if you're trying to figure out how you meet those basic needs, it's a problem. It's not just convenience. We've talked about that. It's not just convenience, it's a food insecurity issue. And so that's what inspired this. I wanted to both find a way to make the search easy. It's not easy to find the information for many schools and how they approach this. So I was looking to make that search easier for prospective students and their families. And then, of course, hopefully impact change. And so, a lot of what we're trying to do with this directory is really shine a bright light on those places that are doing it well to hopefully spread that best practice. Kind of how I've always moved as an educator as well. So, that's the spirit behind it. And so, it's been a labor of love for about a year. I actually have another celiac mama who helped build out the website, Debbie from Uplevel Marketing, and here we are.
That's super exciting. So, we kind of talked about why you started this guide, but can you share a little bit more about what this guide does and how students that are looking at colleges can use it to help in their college search?
Absolutely. So we really wanted it to function like a search directory. And so when you're at different places within your college search, it might serve different purposes for you. So let's say you're just beginning and you're just setting out, you might be able to search by the size of the school, by what the acceptance rate of the school, by the general location and pull up a variety of schools. Then you can also sort by gluten-free, what we call gluten-free provisions. So you can turn on a filter to say, I'm only interested in places that have gluten-free stations or a gluten-free kitchen, and you can filter that way and see within those parameters what schools are out there and how they're supporting students with gluten-free needs. Alternatively, or like additionally, if you're at the place where you're like, you know what? I know I want to go to my alma mater, let's say Boston College. You can type in Boston College, pull up that school's listing itself, and see information about what they do. So we get information in three main ways for it. First, there was a lot of research. So we researched based on like publicly sourced information, places, websites, over 500 schools and what they have. And so we have linked in there for those 500 schools where you can find information, contact information, and those gluten-free provisions. Additionally, more and more schools each day are starting to provide what we call like verified information, so additional information about their school. So really in-depth knowledge about their approaches to things like cross-contamination or variety, et cetera. And so that's been exciting. And so you can actually also filter by verified schools to see that information from the schools themselves. And then lastly, we have reviews from students and families. And so, of course, we always, put that with an asterisk. This is one person's experience, but we know that's really important for the community to say, okay, that's what's on paper. What is the real life experience? And so, yeah, that's all in there. I mean, so I'm happy to show you a little bit if you
Yeah, that
want.
would be
Okay,
awesome.
great. So this is the website, celiaccollegeguide.org, and you can use it in a number of different ways. So let's go for this search engine because that's the main function of the website. So first of all, if you want to go to those college verified profiles, you can click here. And this is showing schools that have taken the time to enter the information about how they're approaching gluten-free dining and support. So I'm in New Jersey. We'll pull up Rutgers, for example. So if you click on Rutgers, you see not just the information that we have sourced there on the top publicly, but then you see they answer all sorts of questions about accommodations. Is there a gluten-free kitchen? Are there pantries? So these are things that students look for, like a really specific pantry that only gluten-free students can enter, fryers, things like that. Can they get hot meals? Talking about variety, other support systems in place. So this is the type, and then information about financial aid, and then they're able to add additional information. So that's that part, the verified. But in general, like I was saying before, you can use our filters. So you can filter by things like I want to see schools with gluten-free stations that are medium or large, let's say. You could also filter by acceptance rate, public, private. So let's go here. And we can see we have 177 schools that have gluten-free stations that are medium or large schools. And so then you can go and look through. You could even say, okay, well, I'm a hotshot here. I want these schools to be extremely selective, very selective, or selective. Let me go there. Okay, now we're down to 47 schools. So it really is intended to, work as a directory, just like you might use. Of course, you could always just type the name of the school directly in. I'm putting in Boston. I'm saying schools in Boston, and there's Boston College. And look, they have 2 5-star reviews of Boston College. So that's great too. If you want to see how the reviews work, I'm trying to do this quickly so I don't bore you, audience. We ask them to actually review not just overall, but on safety, variety, taste, accessibility, and their accommodations. And so you can get a little bit more sense of that. We also highlight some products, things we love, some news that's out there, and etc. So that's a little bit about the website. Anything else you want me to show you, Sharon, on here?
Um, I don't know. I think that's really, I love the search function because I feel like at this point, my kids do not have celiac disease yet, or hopefully will never, but right, they don't have it. But if they did, like, I honestly feel like before we would even start college searching, I would just look like here are 100 or so colleges that are very friendly to your condition. So, like, let's take that fear out of the way and now look at what you want in a college, right? Like, I just find that so helpful.
Thank you. I really don't think it had occurred to me years ago just how critical this piece of the college search process was going to be for my children. You know, my one daughter, if she gets gluten, she throws up till she passes out, right? This is not something that can be in question for her. And so this is going to have to really drive the type of school that she looks for. And so it will narrow her choices, but we wanted to provide this resource. Of course, I feel like I always have to say, and as a dietitian, I'm sure you can appreciate this, Sharon, you should always triangulate this with your own research, right? But this is meant to at least give you a jumping off point. You can see if you go to, actually, let me just go to one of these verified ones. So you can see if you go in there, we'll go with Appalachian State. They're actually one of the first ones to um, claim their listing, so they have a special place in my heart. You know, if nothing else, you can come right here and there's going to be a link that's going to take you right to where they talk about food allergies and or, you know, celiac gluten-free accommodations. And so again, we just wanted to make it easier on you, but you always want to do your own research as well, of course.
Yes. Yeah, that's so neat. Honestly, this is just my ignorance from not being in a college dining setting in so long. Like, where I career changed and got my RD, like I walked through their cafeteria during one of my food management classes and kind of kept an eye out for it just because I knew it. But they're a very small school and they had like a section in their kitchen for allergen foods, like back in the
Mhm.
kitchen. And they had some things labeled, but for somebody, right, with celiac who really can't handle cross contact and stuff like that, they could pull something out for them or have something set aside for them, which is something, right? But if not a huge option, right? When all the other kids have all these choices and you have this right here. I guess this thought of like a gluten-free station and things like that are so interesting to me for college. And they just makes so much sense, right? Like it's great. Do you have an idea of what these kind of look like in practicality at some of these universities?
So, as far as what they look like in practicality, and let me know if I'm not answering your question. So what happens is in many of them, not all of them. So there are some places that have fully, like Cornell, for example, has a fully gluten-free dining hall where you're going to have, you know, a wide range of variety for those. Typically, not every school does approaches this the same way. Typically, what you're going to find in a is a fully allergen-free station, and so it's also going to be free of the top 9 allergens. And so, for a lot of kids, that works really well. They really take cross-contamination seriously. It can be limiting. I think about that for my own daughter, and so, okay, if she can't have nuts or dairy or soy, you know, just trying to think through how she's going to get her protein. And so that's also part of why one of the things that we have is a free accommodations guide, because there are a lot of different accommodations out there that one might want to consider depending, right? So if you're not a kid who you know, often it might look like something like rice, chicken breast, broccoli, like a really nice healthy meal at these stations, she might need to supplement that, right? And so there are accommodations in there that we suggest talking to your college about, which might look like something, you know, depending, it could be having a little mini fridge or microwave in your room, if that's something, or a dorm accommodation that has a kitchen, right? It also could look like getting your meal plan waived, and so you can repurpose or reduce. So you can repurpose some of those funds because we know gluten-free food is expensive, right? And so every child is different. There's not a one size fits all based on you know, how this might look or work for you, but that's why we try to put that out there. One of the my favorite recommendations, and actually RISD just put this, I have this on my Instagram, but RISD just put this in their post, is and when I the first time I heard this, it like hit me like a ton of bricks. They said try to get housing near um the gluten-free stations, right? So if you're a college where only one dining hall really accommodates that, try to get your housing near there. Why is that important? This has huge sweeping social impacts for kids too, right? This isn't just, I mean, that their health obviously is the first thing we're going to think and talk about. But a lot of kids, this can be both anxiety producing, but also if you think about what does social life revolve around, right? And so often it's eating. If you have a dorm that's right near the place with the gluten-free station, let's say, or the gluten-free dining hall, your friends are going to be more likely to come with you, right? And so there's some of those little subtle things that people might not always think about that we hope would be helpful. And it's free. The accommodations guide is free. So there's just some recommendations in there for people.
Yeah, and I imagine that's so helpful for students that maybe were already in college when they got diagnosed, right? They may not have
Yes, and
had
that does
this
happen.
before that process, right?
And then their whole world gets turned upside down, right? Yes.
Yeah, and how scary is a parent too? Like thinking about it from a parent perspective, right? Like it's scary enough to have to modify your home kitchen, right, for a new diagnosis, but looking at an adult child, right, who's out in the world and who is not wholly in control of their environment and food, right, is a whole separate situation. And I love that you brought up that social piece because I feel like one of the hardest things about having celiac, I mean, finding safe food is hard, right? It's hard for anybody in any circumstance. Um, but when we think about having to advocate for yourself, when you're a young person who's out on your own for the first time, like I remember how hard it was for me to have my first conversation with the professor about a bad grade, right? Like all those things, getting to understand your roommate and have to work out all of those social things that come into play with living with a stranger, right? All these other things are so hard at college. And I think as adults, we sometimes forget about how hard those things was. But then having to advocate for your food on top of that is this whole other level of responsibility that is now thrust upon these students. And I love this accommodation guide and any steps that can be taken to make this easier. This pivotal part of adulthood, I think, is just so impactful and so important. So, thank you so much for doing that for them.
No, thank you. And, there are other accommodations we talk about in there that are perhaps related to academics, right? So the ability to, we know many students with celiac do suffer from, stomach issues, for example, or if, you get glutened, that brain fog or having to miss class. And so there are some things in there we recommend to putting in as part of your plan, if in the case, you're not feeling well, just like you might have in a 504 or something in high school.
Yeah. So, before we close out, how can people connect with you? How can they learn more about this? I know you showed us the website, but what are some other ways that they can connect with you and get involved?
Sure. We are, first of all, we're on Facebook. It's the Celiac College Guide on Facebook. And so we really use that page to highlight schools that are doing things well, share some new initiatives, some news. We're also on Instagram. So Celiac College Guide on Instagram. And little plug, because it's really important for us to keep this free and accessible for everyone. And so we're starting a fundraising initiative. So we have a new Facebook group called Celiac College Guide Cares. It's a little play on this idea of care package because we noticed gluten-free care packages are so few and far between. And so we wanted to do something that would provide us with some much needed funds, but also lift up small businesses as well as provide something our community wants, like gluten-free treats that are fun. And so we'll be sharing all sorts of deals and special things for our community there. We're about to launch a fall treat package from the Red Bandana, for example, that's really designed for college kiddos in school. But of course, I'll be ordering some cookies for myself too, even though I'm not in college, but I deserve gluten-free cookies too. So that's also a Facebook group to look out for.
Awesome. Well, I will be sharing all of those links in the video description so that people can find them super
Thank you.
easy. Great. Well, is there anything else that you want to share before we close out?
The only other thing I'd share is we're always looking for reviews from current students in college and their parents. It takes 2 minutes, literally. You do it right on the website. But that in-depth perspective or that real life perspective is just so important for people that are prospective students and families. And so would love any help in spreading the word in general. And of course, sharing both how your school approaches gluten-free dining and support is so important. And so I'd be really grateful if any listeners, if you're still there with us and you're currently in school or your kiddo is, would love to know. Just go right in, takes 2 minutes, and it will really benefit students for years to come.
Great. Well, thank you so much for sharing all that information and thank you so much for what you're doing.
Thanks for having me. This was a lot of fun, and thank you for what you're doing and being such a great advocate for the community.